I'm sorry.
As mentioned at the last meeting, our Haz Waste Day is October 4th. Starting this Saturday, people can also take Haz Waste to the Regional Water Authority in New Haven on Saturdays from 9 to 12. Positive note is recycling tip fee for this quarter has dropped down a little over $10. So it's encouraging. And that's it.
What do they, it doesn't have to do with less contamination, does it?
It's probably.
It's commodities.
Commodities,
Yeah.
With a little bit of everything.
Can I ask one question? You break out the resi from commercial MSW,
Yes.
but it's not in the report. I don't.
No, I don't have it. That's a total ton.
Okay.
I mean, your MSW is consisted of commercial, which is maybe around 8,500 tons. Residential, that's somewhere around just under 19,000 tons. Maybe 500 tons of, town itself taking up there for cleaning up parks. You have people that are doing cleanouts and trailering, going over the scale, that's several thousand there. And then you have, we don't get to schools.
They just don't even.
And then you have people, maybe 2,000 tons of people just going there with their car, as the car, between the car and fixed income.
And we pull about a ton a week out of recycling.
Yeah.
Where does the school trash go?
It's, All American has the contract, so you'd have to ask them.
Oh, okay, so All American takes it somewhere.
Yeah, probably they're the only.
Treated as commercial.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
take it, it's a commercial farm.
Yeah, I've seen, well, I have seen your reports where you I'll break those out. I think you do that every year. But that's the report.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we don't do that every month. But
that's why
Yeah, it would be good to have it, every year have one of those, which I'm sure you can provide, but yeah.
I didn't expect that you want to get into that gritty. The big flick of this is how much garbage, how much recycling.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, well, the next item is the revised regulations, which Ron and Misty and Lisa and John worked on, and we approved that at the last meeting. And that was then posted online, and we sent it out, it was sent out to all the haulers. I didn't get any comments, and neither did John, so we'll consider that approved. And what we need to do now, my understanding, we have to have a public hearing, which the two that I've been to, no one has shown up, or maybe I think one person showed up one time. If we're going to do that, I'd like to pick a date that's convenient for you, John, within your work hours. And I think the last time we did it at 3 or 4 or something like that. But why don't you, if you have a suggestion, maybe late next week or something, we'll get this posted and just do the official thing. And then I think the new regs then have to go to the RTM, is that right?
I don't know, did they last time?
I think they did. Yeah, I remember, I was looking for the details, but I'll check with Phil Perry's and make sure we're doing it right. But we can either do that now, or I can talk to you, and we can.
I'll get offline, we'll get together.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so then.
Do you need to have a vote of your body here to approve them?
Well, we should probably, let's do.
To approve them, this is what the board has recommended.
Yeah, I'm not sure we got to that point yet last time we met.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to approve the revised solid waste recycling commission and department regulations that were sent out and without any comment, as written, we've all seen them. So I have like a motion to approve. So moved. Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I'll get together with John to set up a public hearing. It'll be posted. I think you have to post it, I don't know if it's 24 hours or a week, but we'll have it enough out there. And we'll do it at a time of the day that, assuming no one's going to show up, a time of the day that is convenient for John and Lisa if you want to come. So. Oh, and all in favor?
Oh, good point.
Aye. Okay. Okay, well, the next big item is, right after our last meeting, the state of Connecticut put out committed to $7.5 million in grants for the towns and the cities in the state to come up with a program to reduce the amount of MSW, considering the amount that is now shipped out of state. The grant, the basis of the grant is, at least the 5 million part of it, is food waste, is separation, increased separation of food waste, and hopefully unit-based pricing, which both of which have been proven to reduce that. We've been working, and I sent a note on this out, but I'll just briefly, so after that was announced, what we did was to start gathering information to make sure that we have what we need to put into a grant that will be accepted by the state. On April 14th, Megan and I went up to a Sustainable Connecticut walkthrough of the aerated static pile in Newtown. And I had sent a photo summary of that around. We then went to, on April 23rd, I went to I sent information to the Conservation Commission, and they did not approve our suggestion to go to put 2 Metro Store containers in Lake Mohegan. Now, because of the grant, we've now decided, as I'll get into later, we've decided that remote food containers are going to be part of our grant application. So I am still going to get back in touch with them because of some of the information I've learned since then and get approval for that as maybe one location. But the 2 Metro Store containers are not going to happen anytime soon. On April 25th, 10 people from Fairfield, including many of us here, including our first selectman, went down to Stamford to take a look at their aerobic digester, which creates a soil amendment, not a true compost. And then on May 1st, Becky and Andy and I drove down to New Brunswick, New Jersey to see the Rutgers installation of an in-vessel composting system, which looks like will make the most sense for a process here in Fairfield. We then, on May 6th, Becky and Andy and I met with Andrea Ozick, who's Fairfield's grants manager, to talk about content and talk about all the possibilities of this grant. The grant is due by the end of June. I think it's the last Friday in June. So we have some time, but not a ton of time. And one of the things that, and we're going to have a follow-up meeting tomorrow with Andrea to follow up this meeting. And finally, on May 8th, we had a Teams meeting with Denali, who is interested in citing a in-vessel composting system on their site at WeCare. And there's a lot of details that need to be worked out, and certainly one of the things that I think needs to be an action item is to meet with them at the site and talk about what type of equipment is going to be needed there.
Tim,
So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, I want to open the table for discussion.
What else is in the grant besides the MetroStar containers?
The three major,
Asking for it.
the three major items, and I don't know if I have this.
Yeah, I have it. I printed it out.
Well, I actually do have the,
No, I haven't seen this.
the three major items are the in-vessel composting process, which would be able to handle about 400 tons of food
Yeah,
waste
one of the pages.
per year, to be sited at Denali. The second major item we're thinking about 10 remote food waste containers of the Metro Store food waste containers to be put around town. And then finally, the third part of it is studying some way of incorporating a better, a unit-based pricing or a pay-as-you-throw system, at least for people that are coming into the transfer station.
Okay, so we're gonna change the infrastructure down there?
We don't know at this point. We haven't gotten that far, but unit-based pricing is apparently a very important part of what the state is looking for. It's worked in other towns. We know our situation is different than a lot of other towns, but I think we're talking about a study, correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, that would investigate ways to improve what we have right now.
I can share.
Becky Goodell.
So we've been working with Waste Zero, who has been working with, they're the deep contractor to explore
Yeah.
based pricing. And they've actually rolled it out in about 8 to 10 towns so far, but most of those have been at transfer stations. And they've all gone really, really well. Guilford and Madison share a transfer station. It's actually sited in Guilford, and that's sort of the model that we would be using, which is basically keeping everything you're doing now, except that residents would pay for bags when they brought their MSW through the transfer station.
So who's gonna check to make sure they have the bags?
You,
Yes, so we need to,
Enviro.
yeah.
Enviro would.
Well, how? Enviro's,
Well,
what we
happened-
have to change the infrastructure of how we do
Well,
things.
when you said infrastructure, it is absolutely possible that there has to be more people there. There has to be a different setup than you have. Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
right now,
When you
we
say
are
infrastructure,
unit-based. I
when
mean,
you're-
you know, we have a very specific unit for what people pay for. Like today, I had a gentleman came in, he had 4 big cans of garbage.
Yeah,
And he thought he was gonna only pay 7, you know, because he had 4 64-gallon, and we weighed him. And with the weight, because it's based on the unit of $7 for the first
Right.
125, so he ended up paying 28 because he had 380 pounds.
right.
Who's gonna check those barrels to make sure every bag is the right bag?
So that's where we need to work that out. But
Okay, and what are we gonna do for, we're gonna have a loss of revenue, and what are we gonna do for fixed income? These are all really important things.
Fixed income would be, the way it worked in Guilford and Madison is they would pay they would pay the same bag price. But they are going to not obviously, presumably fixed income is smaller households, so they're going to only pay $1.50, which is what the bags were in Madison and Guilford. We'd have to figure out what our bags are, but a tall kitchen garbage bag
Okay.
would be $1.50 per.
Right. But
per
where,
household.
go ahead, John.
And a 33 gallon would be $3.
My one question is, of these other towns that you're saying you're doing the transportation, do they all have scales? Or do they do?
They were actually weighing it. Unlike a lot of the cars that go through, you actually don't always weigh things. I know I've gone through lots of times and I haven't.
Yeah, we don't weigh every car, you know, a lot
A lot of
of
them don't get weighed.
So,
Do any of the cars get weighed?
Oh, God, yeah.
Only the trucks, I thought.
trucks and trailers have to get weighed, the others are at the discretion.
Yeah, so they were weighing all of them. You guys weigh some of them.
So
So
they-
actually it would be similar for you.
So they're bringing in a bag of garbage that they paid for it. Why are they weighing?
They don't weigh it now. They don't have to weigh now. But they've actually simplified their operation.
Okay.
There's no weighing.
So,
So it's actually gotten simpler in one way, but to your point, someone needs to make sure they're using the right bags. And what they did is they hired a person for 2 weeks before to pass out flyers, explain the new process, this has been voted by the RTM, this is what we're gonna be doing, you're gonna be using these bags, here's where you buy them, here's how much they cost. Everyone that goes through the transfer station for 2 weeks before this program starts gets taught that, so they know they have to do it. And then for 2 weeks after, they did it for 4 weeks. We do it longer. It's totally up to the.
so you're just talking kitchen garbage. So when people come in with furniture.
Well, if they're
or
doing
like
furniture or bulky, that's not.
You know, people come in like today, you know, you get the lady with her kitchen garbage and then she's got the stuff from the garage.
Yeah, that would be,
So we'd be double charging them.
That's left lane if they have that stuff.
Well, if they can't fit it into a bag, so that you can do two size bags. There's the kitchen garbage bag, which gets charged one thing, and then there's the 33 gallon, which is kind of a little, I don't know if it's a contractor trash bag, but it's gonna be a bigger bag, obviously.
I don't see what that's buying us.
I just have a question too.
Yeah.
So the goal is to have people bring in less trash because they have to buy the.
No, so the way it works is,
I'm a
in
little
all these,
lost.
so all of Vermont.
Honestly, I don't,
No, so in Vermont, most of New Massachusetts, a lot of New Hampshire, a lot of these
Rhode
towns
Island,
are
all of
already,
them.
Rhode Island, they're all doing it.
Yeah,
And what they found is that
been to
people
places
think,
that do it.
they think differently, and they actually reduce the amount of trash by about 40%. So instead
I
of,
used to do
What's
it
the reason to reduce the trash? Why not just buy more bags?
because the bags are really expensive.
and you want them to
$1.50.
reduce.
A steak at Blackstone's is $165.
Right.
I wanted,
Or-
what are we gonna
Different
do
night.
about the loss of revenue?
Well, presumably there's less
We would price the
waste
bags.
also.
Right now, you're charging your transfer station more than a hauler charges them. So already you're actually overcharging your transfer station people because of the way you do it today, is what the analysis showed. But we can keep overcharging them if you want. Well, we can keep you whole if you want. We can just price the bags to keep you whole.
Well, but who's paying for the bags?
The consumer.
People who,
And who's paying the people that supply the bags?
What do you mean? So the
The
town,
bags are $1.50. Some portion of that goes to town, some portion of that goes to Hefty.
no, it all goes to the towns.
So who pays for the bags?
The people who are supplying the bags, yeah, so the bags right now, like a hefty
There's a
bag.
charge for the
A
bag.
hefty bag is usually 19 cents to 28 cents right now is what you pay today. Today, if you buy a tall kitchen garbage bag and you buy them in back, 100 pack,
Right, they're
you're
cheap.
paying like 19 cents. These bags obviously are $1.50, so the actual bag price is being upped by the amount that covers the tipping fees and hauling fees.
Right.
Well, there,
And those fees are, so you can have people manage the bag purchasing, and they will also manage where the bags are sold, so it does, that can,
So we gotta hire somebody new.
no, it's
Well,
put into the bag fee. It's-
I mean, when I lived,
Okay.
in Rhode Island, I bought them at the grocery store.
That's right.
Yeah, my sister lives in Rhode Island, I know exactly how it's done.
Yeah.
But also, she doesn't pay for garbage pickup.
No,
Can you
I.
get them in a grocery store here, though? They don't sell them here, so.
They have to be
So you-
specially
you
made
would.
per
You
municipality.
You would, yeah.
Right, I mean, like, you couldn't go to
Not like-
Westport.
Madison and Guilford have them in Stop and Shop, CVS,
Yeah.
Walgreens.
Regular stores have them.
They would
Why?
start stocking it if we did that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they do it as a loss leader, to be fair, because they want to get people in. They want people to come shop there. So the same way they do all their other loss leaders, where they, do sales to get people in, they price them the same. They don't make money on them.
Right, right, they don't make, they
I
don't.
would, I don't know. I doubt that.
well,
They're all doing it now.
I don't know. Supermarkets make money.
How much does the steak at Black?
Supermarkets started charging you for paper bags as soon as they found out that they
You
could.
know, supermarkets do nothing for free.
No, they don't do it for free. They do it as a loss leader because they want people to come shop there.
That's a fallacy.
So
It
Becky,
just doesn't happen.
this is for people that are gonna be driving their bags down.
This is transfer station only at this point. This is
Yeah, yeah,
only
yeah.
people who
If-
are already driving to the transfer
okay,
station.
if I may.
Buy this.
We're not,
I don't see how it's.
the details, whatever the details of this are something that we need to work out between now and the end of the year. Becky and I have had a discussion. One idea, without getting special bags, would be to, when people come in with a trunk, I assume you check trunks occasionally.
We check trucks, and we have people roll down the window, we check ours too.
You check, you check, now if someone has a couple of bags, okay, you're gonna assume by looking at it, that's $125, you can charge them $7. Whether it's a special bag, a special 13-gallon bag, or a special, or a regular 13-gallon bag, if they come in with one bag and that, instead of 7, they pay 4, let's say, and if they have 2, they pay 8, and then if, that's the incentive for them to separate their food waste and actually put things that can be recycled out of their garbage and not come down as often.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's
the guy
what I'm
today,
talking
he
about.
comes once a month, he had 4 big garbage bags, and because he
Well, yeah,
paid
but
by
he-
weight.
But he doesn't qualify into that. He gets weighed like everybody else. So
I had another guy come in with a car. I had to send him back to the scale because he had
Yeah.
his 5 garbage bags on top, and then it was all loaded with sheetrock on the bottom.
Well, the same thing would happen then. The
So
same thing
we need to,
This is just for the residents that are just bringing in, like
I had to pull 400 pounds of garbage out of the recycling today from the weekend because people came in, told us we had recycling, and they went right down to recycling.
Well, frankly, then I think you need you need more staff down there if that stuff happens very often. I mean, that's a whole other subject, but yeah, I mean, we know people abuse
People
things,
are
but
going-
you
yeah.
didn't catch them.
I mean, I find suitcases full of paint. So, I mean, they're not gonna be able to fit a suitcase in to these bags. So what are we gonna do?
How does this-
I thought Enviro's gonna move, I thought Enviro's gonna be able to police it better when it moves up to the top. Because right now it's still down at the bottom, right?
Right. I mean, the whole idea is it'll be more visible for people.
Yeah, and Enviro is very good about coming over and asking about food scraps and glass. I mean, they're right there, they seem to be engaged.
They have nothing to do with food waste. They won't even touch it. It's not in their
They
contract.
came over and they said, what are you dropping in? What are you doing?
I mean, they will go over, somebody goes over to the blue wall, because, I mean, you should see all the garbage and recycling that's been thrown in there because, even though we have the horses there.
Yeah, but isn't that the intention, to bring it up closer to the? where they-
Intention is-
Pay them though, right? I mean, I don't know if Denali's
Well,
gonna take
I
over
mean-
supervision.
You gotta pay somebody.
Right.
It sounds like you need a bigger staff if this is going on a lot. That's a whole other subject. One thing I want to emphasize here, it's my understanding, whatever we do, whatever this grant ends up being, it has to have the buy-in from the department
Right.
and from the elected officials. And that's why we're meeting with Andrea tomorrow. This is something that,
Andrew.
Andrea.
Andrea Ozick is the new grants
I
manager.
thought you said Andrew. I was like, wait.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, if you could make this work with the food waste, I think it's great.
Yeah.
But come spend, Saturday, we have 600 people come in, okay? Somebody has to, people have bags all over everything. Again, I mean, they're gonna go buy bags, they're gonna bring the bags into the transfer station. Somebody has to check. I had a guy roll down his window, he just had 3 bags of garbage. I'm like, what's that behind the bag of garbage? It was a
So I
dishwasher.
guess, but the question is, how is this different than that? Like, how is this different than what you already
Well,
have
we
to
have to-
check, right?
We look in everybody's
Yeah.
car, except somebody comes in with a small car and it's in the trunk, we just assume that it's under the 125 pounds.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Oh, I'm all, we need to change the infrastructure.
There's 2 things going on. Basically, people can game the system if it's a 33-pound bag that they paid $3 for because they're going to jam it with sand, for example. And now it weighs 200. So I've been toying with this idea of unit pricing. My opinion is the following. If you got this bag and it weighs less than 65 pounds, you get it for $3.50. If you intend to deliver this bag and have 150 pounds in it, you don't get it for $4. In other words, you buy bags, but there's another contingency. Is it over a weight level? Because that way you got this, I know it sort of breaks what people are trying to do, but I can totally see guys gaming a system that says, here's a $3.50 bag. That's the equivalent of $62.50. All right, or whatever, it's 62 and a half pounds.
Well, it's like
The
the-
guy jams in 120 pounds, he's getting, you can game this system unless you have 2 coefficients, bags and limits on bags. And if you hand in this bag to us and it's way over, then there's additional fees. So there has to be a way to constrain people from just, it's a bag.
But
Like
when
overweight
the
luggage.
logistics of trying to figure that out, when they're in the car, there's 4 bags in there, and what are you gonna do, pull them each out and?
Well, then the other suggestion, really, that I think Becky has made, is you've got to charge enough per bag to limit people's ability to really abuse the system.
Then why change what we were doing?
Because what we're doing is
Because
basically unit pricing.
Because this,
Charging as a unit price right now.
it really comes down to this. I know I think you guys are right. Your units are 0 to 125. You could gradiate tighter, but you're still doing unit. The unit is weight. These guys want to hear it in terms of bag. The state does, okay? They want to hear it in terms of bag. So you can figure out,
Yeah, it's 5 bags for 5 bags are roughly 125 pounds. Okay, if they come in with 10 bags, we charge them 14.
You weigh them.
We give them the option. We either charge them 14 or we offer to weigh them.
Okay.
Anything over 10 bags, we automatically weigh.
And you're talking about 13-gallon bags, or the big ones?
The big ones,
Oh.
you know? I mean, the 13 gallons, I mean, you know, again, that's all speculative. If your truck is full, or your car, we will go out and feel the bags. And if we feel it's necessary to weigh, we will weigh them. You know, we have people sneaking construction debris that way all the time.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead.
Can't you just use the grant money to apply for a second scale? Just weigh in, weigh
Well-
out like every other transportation.
I know, I mean, yeah, I mean, when everybody come in and weigh.
One way
Anything we
and
want
one
in the
way,
grant.
in and out, none of this.
If I may, if I may.
Well, you know, it's
My
like when you gotta
understanding-
put a car over there when the trucks are waiting.
My understanding is that the primary goal of these applications are going to be judged on certain criteria, which is spelled out by percentages in here. UBP, you can get 15% bonus with UBP, which means you don't have to do it, but we're pretty sure a lot of people are going to do it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, in our grant, we don't have to have a decision on exactly how to do this, but we have to have a commitment to do a study or that we're going to do something. Is that correct?
We have to make a commitment that we're going to trial it for we shouldn't use the word trial, that we're going to.
No, don't, yeah, the trial
We're going to
doesn't.
implement it for a year in our transfer station. If it turns out to be a bust, they can't make us keep it going.
But do we have to decide by the end of June what that is? That's not my
No,
understanding.
and we don't have to decide in today's meeting. It
No,
sounds
no, I
like,
mean,
it sounds
but
like there's a meeting we
For our-
need to
For our
have
application,
to
do
figure
we have-
out how this would actually work. Is it bags? Is it stickers? Is it weight plus bags?
But does it have to be a well-defined plan to have it in our application for our grant? We have to commit to do it, but
You have to commit
have
to
all the
do it,
decisions
and
made
you-
by the end of
We
June?
don't have to have 100%, but we need to know if it's going to be a bag.
Well, if we had options, for instance, we had, this is one thing we'll look at, another thing we'll look at that. We don't want to do anything that's going to make your life more difficult. But we also don't, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that we should make an assumption that you don't have to hire more people. You don't have to do something different if it actually makes a difference. We're not doing this to give everyone a hard time. The main thing is if people learn that they take food waste out of their garbage, just like I did, they will have much less MSW. They'll be taking their food waste to the containers, and they'll have, I mean, I can tell you personally, we use about one 13-gallon bag a week of trash. Probably about 3 goes to recycle, and since I've done food waste. Now, we're only 2 people. Okay, we're in a condo, I know.
We do
but-
the same. My family, I have 2 kids, and we do one 13-gallon bag of trash a week. We still play Big Little.
But you're a committed people.
Well, you know what's
Well, we
interesting?
pay Big Little too in our condos. It's all-
What's interesting in this, when there was a meeting that they did and there was follow-up meetings, so there's records of this stuff. They talk about reduction in food waste as being critical. The reason they include UPB, according to them, and I can't figure out how they've figured this out because you gotta have a lot of data to prove this, I think. But they think if you use UPB, people are even more incented to get rid of their food waste.
I understand that.
Okay, so I sort of look at this as if you can take garbage out of your own, if you can take food waste out of your own thing and deliver it essentially close to free, which makes sense because people like Denali will take it for free for sure because they can make some money off it. But if you can take that for free, you then have, and I know we're only measuring unit-based pricing at the transfer center, but for people who are still going to use Matlock or somebody who will do twice a month, smaller levels, that's how I see people benefiting. You take 50%, roughly, the reason I was asking about Resi was to try and get a weight thing. You get like 10,000 tons taken, well, you won't get everybody participating, but if you did, you'd have 10,000 tons taken out of the 31 for food scraps. That, to me, I don't get why they think UPB ultimately changes anything, because all you're really doing is saying, we're taking waste out, we can get that delivered essentially for free, and now all of a sudden, we're paying tip fees on 21,000 tons instead of 31. and these guys have less waste to deliver, you can go to a guy who will do twice a month pickup versus once a month. You're gonna save pretty much money. I don't get why UPP matters, but I will tell you one thing, it matters to them.
Right. Well, colleagues that I've talked to, one of the colleagues, ended up having $1 million grant to do it. And they refused it after going through a pilot program because they said it's not working. And it's too much. And there's, they were doing with the bags and counting all this stuff and everything else. And they turned it back in. They said, nope, we don't want it. It doesn't work, it's not good. Another colleague of mine says, if you're doing food waste, to turn around and try and reduce your costs for the town, that is not going to happen. It only turns around and is just a different diversion process. It's not going to save the town any money, for sure. And at this point, I don't know. Is it going to be costing the town if I'm going to have to start staffing it? Because in this report, you turn around and say, okay, the town will take over this, the town will take over that. Well, then the town's going to need to finance people to do those things.
Right,
The town needs to finance someone to turn around and track all this stuff. The town needs to have somebody who's going to, when the retail store sells a bag, make sure that they're getting that money for the bags come in. I don't know how you even do that. Do you count how many bags came in and then have to say, okay, we should have had this amount of dollars coming back from these 5 stores total? How do I track which store is not paying it all back? I don't know
We hire
how.
firms to do this, and I think that needs to all be put into a big financial picture to figure out what.
Well,
is this
there you
gonna
go.
cost
You
the town.
hired a person to
We're
do this.
increasing
could-
labor
I'm talking
and management, and we're lowering revenue.
No.
A business.
Well, yeah,
We're not a business,
Yeah,
but we're not a
we are
town
business in a
where
way.
our
We are
garbage
business.
is tax-based.
So you're saving on the tip fees on the back end, so you're lowering revenue, because you're not taking as much waste to.
Yeah, but that's a small percentage of all the labor fees.
You don't know that until you run the numbers, do you?
Like,
First of all, we
Other
are
towns have
business,
found
and
this
the taxpayers are who pays.
well,
So we are a business.
we're not a profit-making.
Not what I said. We're a business and the taxpayers pay it. Somebody has to pay it. But I had some, which brought up, one of the questions I had going in, and this is all, like I said, it could all be ironed out. I just wanted to throw some out there so that they get answered. I know we sort of brought it up, but whether or not you sort of answered, but not completely, that it's a requirement to go with the, UBP as a part of this grant. What happens if we receive the grant money and we take it and we use it? Now we have to abide by it.
Well, it is not a requirement to have UBP in this grant. It isn't. It's a 50.
Okay.
It's a,
Okay.
but if whatever we put in the grant, yes, we are obligated to do that. Now, if that, whatever that is hiring someone to study the way Fairfield is doing it and come up with an inclusion, that could satisfy it. And we don't want to play games with this, but I can't believe that, again, I can't believe that there's not a way to improve what you're doing right now. And it may
Can I
cost
finish,
the town.
actually?
Improve the town's budget?
Okay.
Labor is often included in grants, so you can
not in
figure
this
in.
Not in this-
Not in this
not in this.
Okay, that answers that question.
Although
So that
it
means we
can-
would have to,
Yes.
It could be
Pay for it.
included as an in-kind, there's no match to this grant, but they will look at any additional labor that the town needs to incur as in-kind, and that is a positive towards getting the grant.
so labor is not included.
It's not included.
So we would have to come up with, as you talked.
Additional people.
It's not
Well,
included.
a consultant would be included if they're doing the study though, right?
A consultant, if you're gonna do some research or do a
Yeah, but
consultant.
every operation requires labor. Every operation requires labor, right? It's operations. So somewhere along the way, you're gonna have to pay somebody to do something, all right? And the town's gonna have to do that. And another question I had, and again, I'm just throwing these out there now, I'm not looking for answers, is who's gonna manage this grant?
Andrea is our town grant writer.
These are
Yeah,
great.
Andrea is a grant writer, right? She's not a manager of grants.
Well, her
Who's
title
gonna
is-
be the person, the operations man? Every grant has to have somebody that's gonna account for every penny and the operations piece of it. And does that fall into I'm just asking, does that fall in again to John's realm?
Well, no, my understanding is that her job is grants manager. She just got hired.
Right.
And my understanding, and we'll talk about this tomorrow in our meeting, is that once the grant is accepted by, once the decision are made by the department and the elected officials, she'll be the one that will, manage the.
Well, she may do the final numbers. Can I just finish? Can I finish?
Okay, I admit, I've not been a grant.
Can I finish? I thought I had, because I kind of had the floor. Andrea was going to manage that financial piece of it. I get that, but you need to have an operations manager of who's going to tally up, payroll and so forth and be there and make sure it's run properly to report back to Andrea so that she can report the numbers to the state. Andrea's not going to go down to the recycling center and count and be, oversee what's going on. Somebody else is going to have to do that.
You're talking about the UBP portion of it.
Actually, the whole operation, if we're
Well-
going to buy containers and
Well-
somebody's going to have to be there to manage it.
Just about, the biggest part of this project is the in-vessel composting and the auxiliary equipment, which could cost as much as the composter itself, and the 10 bins. That's about $45,000. That amount, we're looking at about $500,000 with the composter and the remote containers, and then whatever, the UBP portion might be $30,000 or $40,000. I don't know. We're not there.
And you're doing that because that's what the state's looking for.
And again, and
Is it-
Becky and I have had a conversation, but the state is not requiring it, but they will give you a 15% bonus. You can get 115% if that's part of it, or, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's not necessary.
It's not necessary, but it's.
It's probably necessary to get a grant, even though they're not saying that.
Right. I mean, because, in the same thing too, Enviro is.
Unless they're going to do a much smaller gift.
You could say you're putting in a pilot to try.
No, they don't.
No, they're done with pilots.
This is
Pilots
not-
are over.
For the UBP.
No. It
It
has to be.
seems like we're doing the right thing by focusing on the food waste removal and trying to get that into play.
I
and-
agree.
And that this whole thing is getting really confusing with the UBP.
I agree.
I think that's a lot to
Two
handle.
things. The first thing is, are you saying that you think that our application is less likely to be awarded if we don't include UBT?
If 15 people apply for the let's say we really want 500,000, and there's 5 million that goes to this thing, the other 2.5 are super experimental, whatever. That means if 15 people, let's just say 10 people apply. If 10 people applied and that's it, and they have 5 million to go, we might get stuff. But I think what they made I don't want to read between the lines, and I'm not a soothsayer, but you can kind of read between the lines. They said unequivocally when people asked, are you going to continue our pilots? The answer was no.
Right.
Are you going to, all we're going to do is fund programs that look like they will be, sustainable is probably the wrong word in this one, but they will be funded by your town for an extended period of time after the grants are over. We want a permanent solution. The guy actually said, by the way, some of the pilots don't really matter anymore because now the state's rules, laws are in place. You either used your pilot well or you didn't, but that game is over. Pilots are gone. Infrastructure backed by communities that will sustain that backing will get grants. My read is that 3 years from now or whatever, the state goes in and makes specific recommendations. And if you don't take this 500 grand now, you're going to be paying it 3 years from now, and you won't have solved anything.
So, but I guess just going back to like the pay-as-you-throw element, because that
Yeah.
seems to be what we're tripped up on. I think we
Yeah.
all feel pretty good about the other elements.
Yes.
I think there has to be some nuance here because, like, for example, when I lived in a town where we had pay-as-you-throw, we had municipal trash. It's very, very different from having private haulers. And because we're in that position, unlike many of the other towns that maybe are applying for these grants, it puts us at kind of a disadvantage because it is harder to make pay-as-you-throw work here. It's like a lot harder. So, I mean, my inclination would be to drop that part of it, unless you think that we really can't get the grant at all unless that's included.
They did make one thing clear. They said, and not to, maybe over exaggerated, but they said, we're looking at 10,000 and less, 10,000 to, I don't know,
Size of
whatever it
town.
was, 50,000 or something, and then
60,000
bigger
or
towns. So if we want to say as a bigger town that we need more time to actually get the pay-as-you-go thing accurate because it's tougher, maybe that's the best pitch we can make to Tim's point, which is, we talk about, we're in the biggest communities, we have private stuff. All we're really looking at is whatever the amount of transfer station is looking for. Is pay-as-you-go really? I mean, we can say we'll look at it, but the question really is,
Yeah, that's,
I
I
don't
think,
think realistically, all we can do is say we'll look at it and have a plan to do that. That's all we can do.
Can I make a suggestion for
Yeah.
this meeting? It sounds like you guys are fairly aligned on the Metro Store containers and the food waste part of this. So why don't if this commission feels that, why don't you potentially approve two things? One, start the grant writing to get that part done. So at least the grant process completes and you start managing expectations with town staff and getting the numbers and getting it all ready. Get a separate working group together to look at pay-as-you-throw at the transfer station and see, can you find a way to figure it out that doesn't lose money, that if we have extra staffing, pays for itself at somehow as part of the process. And if you can't figure it out, then we submit a grant that doesn't include it.
Okay, first of all, I don't intend to have any kind of a vote tonight because there's too many. What I want to do is talk about some of the action items. We don't need a vote on this until,
Well, you're going to be having Andrea and people work on something, so you need to know.
we're going to talk to her about, well, okay, let me back up. What I think needs to be done between now and we may need a special meeting in a couple of weeks.
because there's no other.
Because, I mean, we've been doing a lot of stuff individually to get information, but I think at this point, we've got, for one thing, I should probably meet with Conservation to get that out of the way, and they're meeting next week. We do need to meet at Denali at the site, I think. I want to get a better handle on what kind of equipment, or at least communicate with them, what kind of equipment they need to, the food waste that goes into this composter. If it has, this particular composter, because of the device inside, it doesn't like the compostable bags. It has to go through some kind of a shredder or something. And also, if the compostable trays from the schools are going to go in, that needs to be shredded. So we need some equipment ahead of time, perhaps then a storage area. And on the phone, Denali was talking about having a front loader to actually
Skid
load,
steer.
to load the composter versus that, individual cart loader. Those are the kinds of things as an engineer knowing equipment, I need to know more about that. I'm going to ask for a new quote or a budget estimate from Metro Store for 10 of these because we only have one for 2. Let's see, we have our meeting tomorrow, I think, and,
So 10?
Yeah, once you get 10 and then 5 places to put them.
well, okay, let me get something up
Find
here
one
because,
well, just remember one thing, you guys. If you get Denali to take the composter, you have access to take all the children's or all the school kids' stuff, plus a completely full basket of these outside containers, gets you to about 250, 275 tons, and the machine we're buying can actually process more than that. So you're not spending $70,000 shipping your stuff up to
Yeah.
wherever. You have local, and it all dumps at Denali. So that's, believe it or not, that's probably worth, according to, in these numbers, it's worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $90,000.
So is the Board of Ed still going to then be paying for that 70,000, just paying it towards that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Will the
you.
Board of Ed be financing this thing?
the Board of Ed will instead of shipping having it shipped to New Milford, it'll be shipped just down.
But your point is, can you get the 70 grand back from the board?
Well, I think The
It should
one
be
question
able-
I have, and I think someone should ask, someone need,
Well, no,
Nobody's gonna pay for it.
It's paid for by the grant.
technically, the Board of Ed has not yet paid any of these bills. So
Right, it's still on you guys.
it's still covered by a grant, and the RTM approved the budget. There's some holes, so like nothing is approved yet, and there's no guarantees, but.
Is that piece still in the budget?
Was that?
Is that piece still in the budget? That
It
70?
is currently still in the budget, but the budget,
it was
The
approved.
budget's been
the
approved.
budget has been approved, but it was approved $950,000 short of what the ask was.
And it wasn't a line item, there wasn't a line item in there.
There is a line item in there for it, but anything could be cut at
board-
this point.
My understanding is the town says, we're giving you this amount of money, and then they have no say, and then the board does what they want, is my understanding how that works.
Okay.
Board decides where the cut has to be made, yes.
Well, one of the things I would like to do, and maybe, you know the guy at Curbside, we should get an estimate from them as to what they would charge for both the schools and the, and customers and to, instead of shipping through Milford, what savings would we have by keeping it right here in town? I think that's gonna be a big number, because the shipping
Right,
costs.
but we have to
Well-
make sure.
Are you, when you say customers, there are customers that they pick up in town?
Oh, no, not commercial, no, just,
Just resi.
yeah, it has to be just resident, because
No, well, they're residential customers in town.
Right.
Is that gonna be part of it then?
He's talking about curbsides only.
Kurt, you said.
Oh, no, not there, no, just curbside. You're a curbside customer,
I'm a curbside customer.
and then, and so is so are the schools, and you are, and, yeah, but I think the answer to your question, they're not gonna include what they're picking up from Trader Joe's or wherever else.
They are gonna include what they're running as a commercial operation, picking up the.
They only
residents.
have 44 residential customers in Fairfield.
But my argument is they start in Greenwich in the morning and the truck, as it gets fuller. So they would have to send an empty truck to Fairfield. So we need to know what type of price.
Well, and frankly, the more I understand this, frankly, I think that if this is all set up with 10 remote bins and the schools and the composter, some local hauler can do it. It may not be curbside.
It might not
Why
be
would it
something that would
I mean,
go out
if they could bid on it, but it would have to go out to bid to see. But I think the point is that the shipping costs are going to be much less. Even when we were in Newtown, they said even there, going from Newtown to New Milford, which is probably only 10, 15 miles, the shipping cost was their biggest cost.
It is.
And we're going 30 miles, yeah. I just wanted to show you something. One of the, as I got into I decided to go up to, the director of, up in West Hartford, made a presentation at the DEP Zoom about, they now have 4 of these Metro Store units. And I went up to see, my son lives there, I went up to see him on Friday and made a point of going, taking some photos. You can see here, this is the one at, this is the photo of the one at Town Hall. I talked to her today, she said that it got filled on Saturday, they have to buy another one. So there'll be 2 at Town Hall. Same thing with, I'm not sure if it was this one or this one. This one got my attention because one of the objections for the parking for Lake Mohegan is that, well, you don't want this near where kids are. Well, why not? I mean, they got all this other stuff there. This one also, they need to put a second one in because it's been that successful. She had 400 people sign up in 1 week. So that's why I think it makes a lot of sense to put these containers, two at each of maybe 5 locations around town.
Can I ask, what's in it for the residents in West Hartford to bring their food waste there, to drive their food waste over? Other than doing the right thing for the environment and so on, what's in it for them financially? How does it ultimately come back to them pretty much as an ersatz pay-as-you-throw thing?
I think they've done a really good publicity campaign. and
Yeah,
the fact that-
I don't know.
No, wait. I think they've done a really good, because you sent us all these pictures, they've done a really good publicity campaign about why this is such a nightmare. The waste is such a nightmare. And they have charts and graphs of how you can take this out, you can take this out, you can take this out, and you end up with
Well,
so
this was their
much.
presentation.
Okay, but let's say we have a wildly successful program here where we get all kinds of food waste into 10 of these, plus the schools and whatever. How does it come back to the individual resident? I mean, other than something that's out of the goodness of their hearts to bring the stuff to there, as opposed to just leaving it in the trash for Brad to haul away. Now, Brad is hauling, at least as far as I'm concerned, half the weight.
Right.
So what does Brad have to say about that?
And I was going to ask Brad, you have, your customers have, you have different rates depending on how big the container is and how often you pick up. So, yeah, I mean, and obviously you could lose revenue if someone halves their waste, but do your customers have that option?
I mean, if everyone actually cut their weight in half, no, we'd be able to adjust our prices theoretically.
Yeah.
And you don't
It's
pay
some,
the tip
it's
fees,
some
okay?
portion, I still pay the same
Same labor,
I
same
still pay the
gas.
same workers' comp. The dump fee is a portion of it, but honestly, I mean, you know, we pay $100,000 a month in insurance. So the $80,000 for the tip fees is like, well,
You're providing a service. I mean, yeah, the tips fees will go down, but you're not going to do your service for free no matter how little it costs.
What if you offered, and I know you don't because I
You know,
called and
really
asked
say
for
no,
it.
And I've done the math 100 times. Let me pack all of it in with the garbage and pay for it as garbage. And it's cheaper. I hate to say it, but it's true. It's cheaper. I would have half the labor and 2/3 the trucks, and the insurance on the trucks, and the insurance on the labor, and workers'
Just
comp.
sad
I
commentary.
think that the cost to dump it is not enough to make it, the garbage is too cheap to make it worth doing in reality.
If
Well, of course,
It's not the thing you want to hear. It's the exact opposite. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying,
Well,
like,
it's
the
such a
numbers
small
are so
percentage.
far out of whack that where you're trying to pull them to, I don't see how you could ever reach it.
And we're not even charging for recycling yet.
Yeah.
Right.
And the carbon footprint,
Yeah, it's an
And if you
issue.
charge for recycling, it would make it
for sure.
Right.
worse. It would not help.
I mean, technically, you should.
You know, and
If garbage was like 300 a ton, it would make sense for me to recycle more. At 100 something a ton, it would be cheaper
Yeah, so
for
we
me
going
to
up
put
next
all
year
the
to 300,
recycling in
right?
together.
Well, of course, this is the driver up there.
But
We all know that.
what if you,
If we could actually get everyone in town to go to every other week.
right, that's my
Everyone,
question.
has to be everyone, it can't be some, it has to be everybody.
Okay,
Or like a significant portion. That we could create entire routes that were logical routes that weren't all these dash dart around town nonsense. Yeah, you could probably save some money. You're talking about getting like 17,000 people to go from twice a week, or sorry, once a week to every other week.
That's what we
I have
have.
customers who have 6 96-gallon carts.
That's the reality.
Could I just,
Multiple customers with 6 96-gallon carts, or 3 or 4 of them twice a week.
You increase.
well, I can tell you this, if you offered it to 60-year-old and older, 2 family units, you would own the market. Because I guarantee you, I had 7 people in my house once. Yeah, I had to get that garbage out once a week. I have 2. It's ridiculous, particularly when you take out your food. It's almost nothing.
Here's the counter to that. The people that I have who make that much garbage, who have all those kids,
Yeah.
they get the deal. And
Yeah.
the people who are in their 80s
Yeah.
kind of
They
get the
do not
bad.
yeah.
But I like to compare it to the school system. If you live in town, and you don't have kids. I don't live in town, but if I lived in town and you guys had kids in the school system, I have no kids, but I'm still paying to put your kids through the school
I'm
system.
fully aware of that too.
So I pay for 8 years or 10 years or whatever when my kids are there. But then the whole rest of the time I'm there, I'm still paying for everybody else's kids. So when you're 20 and all you're making is recycling because it's just Budweiser cans. And then when you're 80 and you're not really making that much garbage, that makes up for the part in the middle.
Wine bottles when you're 80.
Well, but
It makes up for you.
But-
You got benefited for a
I will
while.
admit, like, we don't create our pricing, we can't break our pricing down enough to properly charge, and I admit this, to properly charge the people who are making a crazy amount of garbage. Because it flows, like, certain neighborhoods in town 20 years ago or like the heaviest, I had guys who like almost quit when I changed their routes because they went to another side of town. They were like, I don't know what these people over here are doing. There's still only 300 stops on the route, but we're here 7 hours. And then they go to the other side of the town and they do 450 stops and they're done in half the time.
And I see it with your loads
And
too.
then, and you see with the loads, and slowly it moved to a different side of town. And then suddenly, this is the hot school system.
This is the aging community.
Stratfield School was like, everyone wanted their kids there. Now clearly it's Mill Hill and down at the beach, because everybody with kids lives in Mill Hill or at the beach. And if I showed you a chart, like, what comes from where and the number, like, per house, it's unbelievable, how much it changes. It's really hard for us to adjust our prices fast enough. And it's really hard for people to understand that that's why we're like, people will leave for like $2 and go get another hauler. And honestly, we've raised a couple times, it was, you know, $1.80 or like $3, and it's like, oh, we're just going somewhere else. It's like, to make an adjustment for that, it's really hard for people to understand. So for us, it's easier to say, well, if you have 1 cart, it's this price. If you have 2 carts, it's this price. If we come twice a week, people understand that a lot more.
Well, it's cognitive.
And somewhere
Why is
in there,
it-
and
why
somewhere
is
still
it-
in there, there's an averaging that the guy with 1 cart who lives by himself is like half full all the time. And he is in fact paying for the people whose lid is never shut to some extent.
Yeah.
But it's because, you know, like, it all gets averaged out in the truck and we weigh the whole truck. I can't weigh.
Which is the same thing
Why-
with systems
so
of
why can
distribution.
you
You've got, you know,
do
Mary
2
Sue
pickups a week
comes with
for
1
some
bag, and then
people,
you
but
have
not do
John
less
and Mary
than
who
one
come with
for others?
Town told us always
8 bags.
that.
And we didn't catch that they were 8 bags.
Didn't we just write all that in there,
It
that the
balances
minimum
out.
was once a week pickup?
Yep.
Didn't I just see all that written in there? We can't do every other week pickup?
What? Is that your new regs?
It was always in there.
It's always been in there.
How am I the only one who read
From the
this?
state statute, nothing putable could sit longer than 20, you know, the week.
Right, you don't want rats, you don't want roaches, you don't want.
Smells.
Yeah, you've got to go back to the state statutes to change
It
that.
doesn't have food waste in it. Oh my God.
So we used to be twice a week pickup in town. Forever, it was twice a week pickup. And then we started recycling and we cut it in half. 1 pickup became recycling. That's why we never upped our prices when we started recycling, because we ditched garbage pickup for recycling pickup. It's the same trucks, it's the same workload, it's just a pickup. It's
Well,
also incredibly difficult. It's so easy for people to understand Tuesday. It's really hard for people to understand
Tuesday.
every other Tuesday. Because, and really it's because we have these months with 5. If you could say like, oh, it's first week, second week, third week, fourth week, what do we do, just skip the 5th week? People wouldn't stand for that, because then, you know, Bridgeport does it every other week for recycling. I lived in Bridgeport for a long time. Nobody gets it right. You get one guy on the street who's got it wrong, and then everybody, even me, goes, wait, why's Dave got his card out? All right, I'll put mine out too. And then the neighbor over there goes, oh, Brad, he owns the garbage company, he must know what day it is. Yeah, everybody puts their cards out on the street, and the city doesn't come. And then we all go, 1 week. That was like 10 years, I still never got it right.
And it used to be
And it's a-
garbage was picked up on one day and recycling was picked up on another.
Right,
That's how it originally was.
right.
what is it now?
They're both the same day at least.
Really?
Most haulers do it the same. I think everybody who's left now, I don't think anybody does it separately.
How many haulers, is it still
Some of the small
9?
guys, some might do it 2 trucks.
I think we got
So-
9 holes, right? Or
Doesn't
we just
matter.
had-
That's the way- It does, yeah.
It's the same day though. Oh, I mean, we use 2
Oh.
trucks, but it's
Well,
the same day.
Let me ask you a question, and this is part of the presentation we wrote, and if all you guys haven't read it, it has sort of Connecticut is selling this concept too, not just Sustainable Fairfield. So Connecticut's really telling you, I'm sorry for interrupting, but just to your question, why would people do this? If you look at 5 years forward, 10 years forward, 15 years forward, and you see the amount of garbage that is created and what can be done with it and where we are in hauling, the state made it very clear in its presentation that we have a motivation as a state not to ship our garbage to other people. We have a motivation to be responsible for ourselves. We have a motivation to keep costs down, because if we don't change 110 tipping fees, which we now think might be too high, are going to be 300, 15 years down the line. So why are you training people to reduce waste? Because they, in 15 years, will be paying 3 times as much for pickups than they do today. If you take out half of that waste, your cost is reduced as a consumer of a free market, 9
Down the road a
delivery
piece.
system. Pardon?
Down the road a piece.
Well, unfortunately, I realize that most people get motivated on what happened yesterday, or in the first quarter, or in the next 6 months. But the reality is, in my opinion, and I don't know, I can't predict prices. If I could predict prices for the next 15 years, I would have retired a long time ago. But I do think at some level, you get kids involved, they get excited, they think they're doing something good. It takes time for people to change their motivation, but I think at some level, a kick in the shins hard enough gets people to go, I should have done that earlier.
Well, then how do you get people, I'm all for it because I'm doing it and I'm paying a lot to do it.
Same.
But, so then how do you get people next week, let's just say in theory, to say, all right, I'm going to start putting all my food waste into this little bucket on the counter, and I'm either going to have someone come pick it up, or I'm going to bring it to one of the Metro Store things, or I'm going to take it down to Lisa.
Yep.
How do you get them motivated to do that then next week?
I don't know, because it's hard to motivate myself. But I mean, I hear you. I don't think it's that easy for people that are entrenched. The other thing I really think is
Well, the
that
way
for
you motivate,
people, not to be, garbage at $200 a quarter, for some people, it's irrelevant. They're commuting into Stanford or wherever. They got kids. They're loaded. They're not, I mean, they're making money, but that marginal $50 a quarter
Well, but-
isn't.
okay, but Brad is making the point that he loses customers over $2 a month.
Well,
sometimes.
Something.
My point with that was more that people get annoyed when we change it.
They change of any kind.
Up or down. I had a guy yell at me because we lowered it when we took our diesel fee down. He was like, well, now my whole bank thing's on. His auto payments. But going back to your point that you said kick in the shins, you gotta have a hard enough kick in the shins for people to really care about it. And if you kind of boil it down, it's what, $7 to come in for a car? So if you came in, to compare apples to apples, you have to compare the person who's going to the dump every week. You can't compare somebody who can go once a week to the transfer station to like our service. It's not the same.
You can't.
It's not the same
It's
thing. You're
apples and
paying for the
oranges.
convenience of having the option to put it out every week. You pay for the option to turn on ESPN Sports you don't watch a game every minute, but it's there. If you take the $7 times the 4.3 weeks and take that off of what we charge, you're like in the 20-something dollar portion. And that pays for like, our labor and our trucks and everything. So a portion of that 20, only a portion of that 20 is really like the dump fee. There's not a lot in there. So like, even if you cut the dump fee substantially, like it doesn't change the rate I would charge drastically. I mean, yeah, it changes it. It's not like drastic. And I think what makes it difficult in Fairfield is, like you said, if it's $50 a month for garbage service, and you're in Fairfield, what is your tax bill a month in Fairfield?
Yeah.
It's way more than $50. What is your electric bill? I guarantee you it's 4 times that, minimum. Minimum. What's less than the 50 a month for garbage? It's like it's the last thing people think about. I mean, because your water bill is probably more than $50, or it's close to it.
Mike,
I'm not saying 50's cheap, but I'm saying that it's harder in Fairfield because there's a lot of people with tax bills that are like $60,000 a year.
They don't care.
So 50's not a kick in the shins. 50's like, what? Oh, shoot, I forgot to pay that. Not everybody. I'm not saying everybody, but because it's not everybody, you're narrowing down the people who it really affects and who really are motivated. Like the dollars is not a motivating factor for a majority of the
some people.
people, I'm gonna say a majority of the people in Fairfield.
And there's
I
also
mean,
the,
every house, I see houses, I look at Zillow, and you see these houses that are for sale and they're $1 million, and you go, that's a $100,000 house in other state, you know what I mean? So I think it makes it way more difficult here, because the money is not a driving factor. So you get a lot of people who are motivated because they feel like it's the right thing to do, and it's environmentally safe, and there's a larger percent of those people here in Fairfield.
but
than a
West
lot of
Hartford
places.
has a similar population. Guilford and Madison, you see some of those houses up there? They
I
are
don't know about West Hartford.
I said, the
Madison,
majority,
maybe.
there are some places that, I mean,
Maybe.
there are other towns that are doing
But they're
this, they're
too
doing it
small.
effectively. Well, Guilford, Madison together is 40,000
Well, the,
between
It's
the
like,
two,
is
because they
that
have
like
one
half of
transfer.
Fairfield?
Or
the
60.
reason I used West Hartford. West Hartford's population is 64,000.
It's like us.
Ours is like 61, or it's 5 or
That's
something.
close then.
Yeah, right. Mike, you wanted to say something?
I just have to say, I somewhat disagree with you, because every penny counts. And every time they raise taxes, every dollar they add to the garbage pickup, every dollar they add to this, it all adds up. We spend so much time, and this has come up once before when we talked about using the digesters, and we always disincentivize, always, the state. We're gonna kick you in the shins, and that's when you're gonna learn. Sooner or later, can we come up with something? And we did one time, when we were talking back with some of the plans we had, as some incentive-based. Like when, and we don't do that, you wanna change motivation, you wanna motivate people, incentivize them.
Yeah.
People recycle because they didn't have to pay for it, right? And I don't know if we're
because
in
it's
that direction.
required.
Well,
It's required, but they don't have to pay for it. No, you know what?
If you had to-
If they paid for it, those people would be putting that recycling somewhere else
well,
that don't want to do it.
Mike, we don't know what Brad would do for me, like if I take all my food scraps out of my, which I already do, by the way, Brad, I haven't come to you yet. At any rate, if I took all my food scraps out of my garbage and I reduced first of all, you get nice, clean, not soppy, gloppy stuff that you have to toss into your truck. Nice, clean, respectable garbage goes into the back of your truck, and it's half the weight of what it ordinarily would be. Maybe Brad could give me enough of an incentive to say, oh, okay, at least I'm getting a premium for my effort to separate the stuff out. And it might even help me pay for someone to come pick it up, or it might make it worth my while to drive down to a Metro store thing and dump the stuff in there.
Could you talk
know,
about, I'm sorry, Tim.
No,
Could
go
you
ahead.
just talk a little bit about what you were saying about the size of the bins and the cost being related to the size of the bin you have?
So we have two different sizes of bins we offer.
Okay.
One's a little bit less than the other one. Not a
Okay,
huge difference.
okay. Would you consider having an even smaller bin? It's not worth it to you, right? Because why?
So, I mean, you could, again, it's only a portion of the cost.
Right.
Like, because the weight's only like one portion of it, so it doesn't make a huge difference. Also, I don't think anybody's ever asked me for a smaller bin than a 64-gallon bin.
I mean, I called
So-
to say, I only
I
make
can't just-
this 13-gallon trash bag a week.
Right.
Could you come twice a month or even once a month?
Right.
And you said no. So,
Nicely, though.
very politely, of course. So like as an alternate, because like the truck is already out, almost everyone in my neighborhood uses Big Little, so it's like you're already there, right? But if I had a smaller bin, I might be more motivated to separate my food waste because I was saving a little bit of money. And like the reality is, it is a convenience.
Right.
And I
Two different ways to
still,
look at it.
I've had curbside compost since the day I moved to Fairfield 4 years ago. We don't make a lot of trash, but the dump is far away.
Same here, yeah, same.
But
You
on-
know,
on the
like,
flip
it's-
side- But on the flip side, the day that you have the big picnic graduation party, and with 5 bags of paper plates, you've already got room for it in there, and we're gonna take it.
Yeah, but that happens like once every 5 years.
It's time is money,
I'm trying to say,
okay?
it's-
You live so
Day,
far,
so-
so you don't want to drive to the transfer station.
Right.
Okay, that's why you're paying somebody else.
Right.
Because your value
It's time.
is just as much as his value
Right.
and all his workers.
Right.
There's really, I mean, so it's kind of a wash.
Okay, I'm
Right.
gonna suggest now that I suppose we should have a vote on proceeding with getting more information and that I guess basically, do we want to continue to spend our time and gather information to apply for this grant? I think it's a pretty easy. Can I have a, and I guess, let's just do that.
Do we
start
really need a
with-
vote for that, or just something?
We probably,
just
no, I don't think we do. I think
Right.
everyone
I
understands.
think we all agree on the containers, and we just have to decide whether or not we could do the
I
other.
guess what I would like a vote on is, there's going to be a lot more information in a couple of weeks if we all do what we're trying to do here. I'm wondering would you be available for a special meeting on Wednesday, the 28th? Especially if I had the meeting at like 4 o'clock or something like that. And the reason I say that is, well, I guess I have a selfish reason. I'm going to be gone the first 2 weeks in June. I'm not going to be at the next meeting. I will be back in plenty of time, 2 weeks before the grant is due. But I'm just wondering, we don't have to have a meeting with everyone, but I'm going to be meeting with a lot of you and getting more information. I guess we can, if it gets to a point where I think it makes sense, maybe I'll send something out and we can decide if we want to do that. I mean, we're having a meeting tomorrow. And by the way, our meeting tomorrow is in the second floor conference room of Sullivan Hall. I don't know who's going to be there, but I hope some elected officials are. I hope I know Andrea's going to.
I only invited Andrea.
Well, but Andrea can invite whoever she wants. She's the grant manager. I don't know.
So let me just give some context. Grants right now in this town for this size need to go through all three boards. So we need to get on the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the RTM before we can even apply for this grant.
Right, and
They need to have a 14-point document written that has been agreed by this board and John, that to go to each of those.
Yeah.
If we wait, it ain't gonna happen.
well,
It just ain't.
that's why we're meeting. Tomorrow. We need to
So
talk about
what you
that.
really need is-
She's the one that's going to have to drive that.
Grant or not. Because we're
Why
talking.
can't
And I-
Andrew work on a grant and then bring that back to us then we look at
Well, the
it?
14
That's what-
points is
that's
what
It's
you
a town grant, it's whether or not the town wants to do it.
And by the way-
I would say.
But they need about a month to go through all the three
Right,
boards.
so we could do
So
that.
that has to happen by May 28th, pretty much, if you're gonna get on all the.
No.
Well, they're all,
June 27th is the deadline for the.
But the boards.
the boards have to,
Boards is what she's saying.
I'm just saying, the timing is such that we have to decide if you want people to be spending their time working on a grant, because if you guys don't want it, then stop it right now. Let's not spend Andrea's time, let's not spend my time. let's
We
not-
do
We all
want
want it. We all-
I like your suggestion earlier, and I changed my mind. I think it's tough enough to get the people in this room in agreement. Getting everybody else without a really definitive game plan is probably difficult. I'm sort of changing my mind. I think the unit-based pricing thing could just be a stumbling block for this sell. I think it's an easy sell to say, there's a chance to get $500,000 worth of equipment paid for, which will have certain benefits. How the town determines whether or not we save 80 grand, the town still saves 80 grand on the shipping costs, okay? So I think to the points that were made earlier, to get a guy to weigh bags or to watch every bag or to enter data so that the town can respond to unit-based pricing, it doesn't make any sense to me because it's only the transfer station people that are going to have this done. You don't really know, like you get a bunch of people moving and a bunch of dumping coming in versus, whatever amount of regular garbage you have. That stuff's very clouded. If you can go to the state and say, forget all this nonsense, you're talking about 10% of the people, they got all kinds of crazy stuff coming through here. It's not enough to sample. But here's what is enough to sample. We do 25,000, we do 20, whatever it is, 25 tons, right?
Oh, you mean at the,
At the transfer station. If that number goes to 75 without the schools, and you triple your takeout, does the state really care whether you employed UPB or not. You can also make a case that at 60+ thousand people with a private pickup system, it's almost impossible to manage. Because you don't know when some of these trucks are coming in from Easton or coming in and still picking up from Bridgeport. You just don't know, right? And you're talking about your town and you're trying to do these numbers. It's crazy. So I'm thinking we're supposed to just run with the best play we've got.
I agree that what you just said is I don't think we need, I'm not going to even think about who else is applying for this. I'm not going to think about who the competition is. It's not like a baseball game or who's pitching, but we have no idea who's going to apply for these grants. I know it's in 3 categories. We're in the large category, 60,000 and over, Weather West. I don't know who else, and I don't really care. I think what we do is put the best grant possible forward for the thing that makes most sense for Fairfield. And,
Well, what we think is the most.
well, yeah, of course, that's right.
I'm in with that.
Okay, so I think, okay, moving on, and again, by the way, that's a public meeting tomorrow, isn't it? I mean, by definition, because I've got to say, if anyone wants to join us tomorrow at
It wasn't
2:30.
noticed as a public meeting. It was not noticed as a public meeting of the developers and recycling because they weren't a quorum.
Okay, I don't know how anyone's interested, but I mean, you could certainly sit in, I don't know, a lot of less, it's at 2:30, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I just want to I think tomorrow, what we need to do tomorrow, besides what all I talked about, we have to make sure people do certain things to get more information together as soon as possible.
Yeah, still more
And
data.
yeah, if a week from now, it makes sense to have a special meeting, I'll communicate that.
Don has something.
Yeah.
I heard the one thing where this grant doesn't pay for any labor at all.
Right.
So that means then all this stuff,
Ends up costing in the future.
well, no, of course not.
Yeah, it costs both.
We need to know what the cost is and put it into the grant, and it will be
But-
considered in kind. And yes, the.
Well, when you're saying in kind means we have to hire somebody.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm actually saying that this may end up costing, but I'm not sure it won't be a lot of town to play, but there will be some town time that will be needed to monitor the Metro Store fill levels.
You need to have a
make sure they're
person
picked
that's
up.
gonna be doing this stuff as well, if you're saying
Well,
picking
I have
up.
a question, and this goes back to what Mike was saying before about administering the grant. When we went to Stamford, who do you think was the administrator there?
Who's the guy that's in charge of solid waste?
And he's got
And-
staff.
Andrea is,
Good staff.
yeah,
He's a very big staff.
they have 3 guys down there just watching the help, and that's not even commercial trucks coming in.
And their residential garbage figured in the tax base, unlike Fairfield.
Right, there's a complete different story there.
And he's got a much bigger department.
But you're now saying
And
that.
central collection.
Whatever labor is involved, that the town has to get someone to do that.
I think we
Well-
need to calculate the number of hours. We need to be very clear on the tasks, and you guys need to give us your hour, what you think would take, how many hours. I don't think it's a full-time
Well,
job.
when we're talking about labor when you're talking about labor for the composter and the
Denali will do
bins.
that.
First of all, we have to find out from Denali. Now, one thing I learned in our Denali meeting was the amount of compost that they have handled for years and years, now decades, from the treatment plant is 10 times the amount of compost that this thing will do. Now, so presumably they're charging something for handling the composting now. They're going to charge something for this, but that shouldn't be a big change. But we have to get an estimate from them, not for the grant, but for, we're already paying them. I don't know how, their contract will have to change.
They pay 50 grand for,
To be able to, they're basically leasing the site.
yeah.
That's their lease.
Remember when it
They don't
started.
charge- But that's why they don't charge us anything now because they're selling their stuff.
Right, they're leasing the site, they're making a product that all these landscapers are using by dyeing all the.
Right. So they pay $50,000 to have that land so they can,
And they'll make money on the compost.
But it's a hot commodity. There was a lawsuit when it goes out to bid, if somebody wants it, doesn't get it.
Right.
Because remember, when it started, the town was paying $250,000 a year for another company when it started with Earthgrow. to run that
Well,
site.
can I just say something? When the discussion at Denali was, in my opinion, they sort of, like Tim's saying, we need to see what equipment we have. We can go in and say, give us the most streamlined thing that would be efficient for you guys to use. Not give us the most expensive, all these gadgets we don't need BS, right? But the other thing that I think Denali would be open to is if you said, if you guys were willing to do it, and if it was some kind of bag management guy, maybe those guys can pick up. No, you don't think so, right?
No, I mean,
You don't want to clutter that.
bagging has been looked into at that, location. It's just not feasible.
Okay.
There's a lot more involved than just,
It's not. They
That's
sort
why
of-
it's done in Plainfield. That's why it's the only place in Connecticut that it's done.
Digesters are labor intensive too.
Right.
Sometimes you think that they run themselves, they don't.
No, there's at least,
Liability and insurance that goes along with it, if you're gonna have people walking up and throwing stuff into it. I know this because when I worked for the supermarket chain, I managed 14 digesters. They were gray water digesters. Broke down constantly, very labor intensive. And it increased our insurance because you got people walking up and putting material into it, and next thing you know, they're falling into it, or they're tripping, or they're throwing in.
When you say people, you don't mean the public, right? You mean.
Public. That's how it works,
But
right?
that's not how this would
It's
work.
not, no.
It's not, they throw it in, but then more labor.
No, they,
More labor.
One guy at Denali,
Right, so it's labor.
an hour a day,
well,
not even.
my
I
understanding.
don't know, but
No,
14 digest, 14 gray water digesters I managed.
My understanding
Not
is,
1 hour a day.
All he's doing, because the thing runs.
I know
by
what you're
itself.
saying, I know what
And all
you're
he's doing
saying.
is taking a 65 toter, putting it on a tote loader, pushing a button and it dumps it in, taking it out.
Okay, but what about
He'll
when,
maybe do 10 of those.
The
I don't know how
That's
long-
good then,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
the people don't walk up to it. They throw
no,
it
well,
down.
well, wait a minute. My understanding is what will happen if the composter is at Denali. They will be getting shipments from the schools, from curbside or whoever has that contract. They will be getting shipments from people that, that pay for it. And no, people will come in, like myself, that bring, instead of bringing the food to the transfer station, they will bring it to a place, and it probably is a place away from any equipment, but there's a place that they're gonna dump their food waste along with everything else.
But they're already going there now to give their yard waste, so they would just put their yard waste.
Well, that's right. I mean, someone that's going to the transfer station might have to,
In a
But they
toter.
have to have someone monitor it.
yes, exactly.
that's
Usually,
different.
the stuff we get in ours is ridiculous. It's not clean food.
So let me ask you a question. If one guy's
We need somebody
monitoring,
there to monitor.
well, they need, and remember, it's gotta get
It's a
dumped
it's a
out of the
full-time
truck
person.
somewhere. And then it's gotta go into a grinder or something before it goes into this thing. That's all labor. They can't just say it's only a few hours a week.
That's right.
It's, yeah, and there's the
All
maintenance,
right, I
and
was
it's
saying
the
that
cleaning.
the
of-
machine takes a few hours a week.
Just so I'm, the town wants a grant to buy a machine that the town would essentially own.
That's correct.
But Denali is going to operate, maintain.
Operate, maintain it, pay for the electricity for
And
it.
they are going to want to, they are not doing that for
How do
free.
you get that deal? That's good for them.
But see, and that's where we've gotta be careful too, because I'm still getting calls because they're waiting for the yard waste facility contract to run out.
You want
Because
one
there's a
in your
lot of
yard?
people who want it.
You want me to run it for us?
Want it.
I don't think they'd let me.
All right, well, okay, are there any subcommittee reports?
They run Denali.
No, and you're, yeah. if
I
you're not-
wanted to make a subcommittee at the last meeting, but we didn't have enough people here, or I didn't know who wanted to volunteer. So the subcommittee I wanted to make was to develop a waste reduction plan for the town. And, does anyone want to be on it?
Well, isn't that what we're doing here, kind of, sort of?
I mean, kinda, but I mean like a real document where we like identify the points of focus, I guess, and how to reach those goals.
I mean, there is a state goal.
my suggestion is we take it up on July 1st and see if we can get a grant through on the 20th.
Well, I think.
I mean, I don't mean.
Pick it up.
We don't have meetings in the summer.
We pick it up in September 1st. That's,
Well, that explains a little bit
There's
of
a
it.
lot going on.
I was wondering if anybody wants
Don't
to,
forget this, though. You want to.
That's fine, yeah.
Trans things,
all right.
you gotta get clean, you know, it's like on the trailers, that's why we have the, you know.
So one more item.
I just have one small item that is last year we collected a very nominal amount of food waste at the farmer's market, and then an individual person brought it and dumped it there, and we heard some feedback that we shouldn't be doing that because these individuals are not haulers, and I want to keep collecting food at the farmer's market because it's a day that you're closed.
Didn't we just fix that in the regs? Did they apply for a permit?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the whole thing was in the regular? They just wrote that all in the registration, in the regulations.
Okay.
permit?
So we need a
You
permit?
just have to apply for a permit,
Yeah.
Okay.
pro forma
All one
situation.
paragraph, But I thought you guys put it in.
I read it as closely as I could while my eyes were like.
I didn't catch that either, so.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about collecting it at a local event, there's no guarantee it's from Fairfield. You know, one of the things too is, remember, we're gonna get food waste from people who are not part of our MSW. We're gonna get people, because there's a lot of like-minded people who live in apartment buildings. That's not part of our MSW at the transfer station, but because they sincerely believe in it. So we're gonna get a lot of food waste from people that are not part of what, you know, we represent at the transfer station.
Bottom
The
line
garbage
is,
that we track.
bottom line is though
Such a
that
tiny amount.
it's a unanimous, situation.
Yeah.
If that person came down with the food waste and didn't say anything. I know.
I have a lady that just came in last week. She is so angry because for the last year, she's been going to Westport because it's easier than our place. And they finally caught on to her and they threw her out
Well, okay. But I mean, this.
At the farmer's market or the transfer station?
at the transfer station last week.
wow.
And that, you know, she hates the fact that she's got to check in at Fairfield. You know, and who knows, at Denali, if there's not anybody checking in, who knows who's gonna show up there to drop it off if it's easier.
Well, well, it could easily, I mean, I'm presuming whoever goes in there as an individual car is gonna have a beef sticker. It's-
Well, I bet,
Yeah, but someone has
yeah,
to
we
check.
have to address that too with Leak Your Denali, John.
I would just say that at such time as the amount of food waste that's gathered at the farmer's market reaches a point where it's more than de minimis, we should have another conversation about it. Because otherwise, the person driving up now is indistinguishable from
Right,
any
but
other
are you getting a
resident.
signed volunteer form that makes sure that they're not holding the town liable?
What do you mean holding the town liable?
What if they slip on a banana peel while they're dumping it in?
This has happened to me. This is,
Why are we discussing
If
this?
they're working.
I know why we're discussing this.
It's not for us to decide.
Well,
You're looking to ask us to break the rules, which we can't do.
there's, so, no, I don't think there's a rule about this.
Just do it.
Well, yeah, they did it regardless.
It's silly.
Bring it up. Don't bring it up here.
We got in
You're not getting my
trouble.
point.
Talked about it.
You're right. Thank you.
Ah.
Okay? We can't give
I
you
turned the tape off 10 minutes ago, don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Basically, if you,
No. All right.
Megan, if you get a permit for
Yeah.
DPW, it's
Have a
all,
motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second, all in favor? Thank you, everyone.